Sounds like it's all right. Sounds like we're ready to go. Welcome everyone to Colonial Classics. What are you getting your phone ready? I'm I'm impelled to use the gavel. This meeting is I'm so I don't want to dent the lectern. We're called to order at 11:02 a.m. Today is Monday, June 2nd, 2025. This is Colonial Classics, and I just need to let you all know that we are recording this meeting and it will be shown on YouTube on our YouTube channel in a couple of days. So we'll just get that out of the way. Okay, also just a quick note, if at any time during today's meeting you have a comment or a question or something you want to bring up, make sure to raise your hand and get acknowledged, and Robert will bring a microphone because we want to make sure that we hear all the comments and questions. So those will be on the recording as well. All right, and another thing to get out of the way, today lunch is at China Inn. Chris, you're invited to join us at our expense if you have time after the meeting. Okay. Yeah, I bet you do. Okay, but anyway, China Inn, how many are going so we can get a count for our people to let them know? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 7, maybe 18, give or take 18. I might not have done exactly right, but all right. So with that, let's have Larry Kinter come up and give us some opening thoughts.
Well, I realize this is June, but I'm stuck in May. And I'd like to talk about a little known part of our military tradition, since we're just after Memorial Day. Do you know that at military funerals, the 20-gun salute stands for? Anybody know? The sum of the numbers in the year 1776. I use my adding machine to find out that that's the truth. What? Have you ever noticed that the honor guard pays meticulous attention to correctly folding the American flag how many times? Close. 13 times. You probably thought it was to symbolize the original 13 colonies. But we learn something new every day. The first fold of our flag is a symbol of life. The second fold is a symbol of our belief in eternal life. The third fold is made in honor and remembrance of the veteran departing our ranks and who gave a portion of his or her life for the defense of our country to attain peace throughout the world. The fourth fold represents our weaker nature. As American citizens trusting in God, it is Him we turn to in times of peace, as well in times of war, for His divine guidance. The fifth fold is a tribute to our country. In the words of Stephen Decatur, our country, in dealing with other countries, may she always be right, but is still our country, right or wrong. The sixth fold is for where our hearts lie. It is with our heart that we pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The seventh fold is a tribute to our armed forces, for it is through the armed forces that we protect our country and our flag against all enemies, whether they be found within or without. The eighth fold is a tribute to the one who entered into the valley of the shadow of death, that we might see the light of day and to honor our mother for whom it flies on Mother's Day. The ninth fold is a tribute to womanhood. It has been through their faith, love, loyalty, and devotion that has molded the character of the men and women who have made this country great. The 10th fold is a tribute to Father, who has also given his sons and daughters for the defense of our country since he or she was born. The 11th fold represents the lower portion of the seal of King David and King Solomon and glorifies the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. The 12th fold represents an emblem of eternity and glorifies God the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. The 13th and last fold, when the flag is completely folded, the stars are uppermost, reminding us of our national motto, "In God we trust." After the flag is completely folded and tucked in, it takes on the appearance of a cocked hat, ever reminding us of the soldiers who served under General George Washington and the sailors and Marines who served under Captain John Paul Jones, who were followed by their comrades and shipmates in the armed forces of the United States, preserving for us the right, privileges, and freedoms we enjoy today. And that's it.
Thank you, Larry. That was very interesting. Judy is not here today, so we'll have Lois come and present a membership report and then followed by a treasurer's report. And then Lois, you can stay up here while Adana comes in. We celebrate our birthdays. Okay. Come on, Lois, you can do it.
Good morning. We have 18 members present. Currently, we have 28 paid members to date. And we have two guests, Annette and Charles Olmsted. Wave. They're back there. And of course, we have our guest speaker who will be introduced later to you. Our current balance is $1,002.34. Thanks for the reminder.
Oh, wait a minute. So hi, everybody. We have 3 birthdays in June. Edie Scott's birthday is the 12th. If you don't see her now, maybe later. Mary Lou Maldonado has a birthday on the 16th. Come on down, Mary Lou. And Cindy Dolman has a birthday on the 25th. Okay, Mary Lou, you're gonna get it. You're gonna get all of them, all of them.
Thank you. And
So, it's so perfect. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Mary Lou. Happy birthday to you.
All right. Okay, we're going to quickly move on with our business part of the meeting so we can hear from Chris. That's what y'all came for. So old business, the only thing I have on my list is that we are starting the t-shirt donation today. This month, next month, and August. If you want to, it's optional, but you can bring new or gently used men's t-shirts, and we're going to give them to inner city development. So I saw some out there today, but if you want to bring t-shirts in July or August, we'll still get them to inner city. Any questions about that? Any other old business? New business, just a few really quick things. Just some announcements about activities. A reminder that there's games night tonight at 6 o'clock. There's no Women of Worth, no WOW this month or next. We're taking a break for the summer. And chess is going to start up again this summer, but they're going to meet on the second Tuesday for now at the same time as games. So there will be games. Chess will be one of those games that starts next Tuesday, and then they're going to decide how often to meet after that. All right. So any other new business? Anybody has anything you want announced? All right. Well, good. Then we're ready for our speaker. I'm pleased to announce Chris, pronounce your last name Suchan? Suchan. Chris Suchan, he's the chief meteorologist of News 4 San Antonio. And I found this little, you can take one of our newsletters if you want. I stole your picture from the website or Facebook or somewhere. And even this little blurb here that I took word for word from the internet, so it must be true. It says, Chris is a proven and knowledgeable meteorologist with 20 years of experience keeping viewers safe with his accurate forecasts. All right, Chris, come on up.
It just dawned on me that now it's not 20 years, that needs to be updated. So pushing over 25 years, getting closer to 30 years. So I got to get on that. Yeah. So, but good morning, and thank you all for having me here today to speak to you. I figure what I'll do is give you a little bit of a background on me, and before I get into my PowerPoint show here. And by the way, you learn something every day, and I was listening to you intently there with the folds, and I appreciate that. What's that? New to you too. Yeah, so that was really neat. I enjoyed that. I come from a family of law enforcement, so I'm the only scientist. My father was a chemistry major, honor society, went to Seton Hall University on chemistry, and then couldn't do the advanced math and bailed and went to criminal justice. And so I became the lone Suchan scientist in the family. So my father's proud of that. But I'm proud of my father because he made a career out of the FBI and the CIA. And he's now retired, living his good life. But I can't, because this will be on YouTube, I can't say too much. But he was counter-espionage. So a lot of the spies you've seen caught over the years, my father's been involved in a lot of that. And so he promised my brother and I one day he would like write some things down so we would have some of his stories that we'll have. But he's my hero. And I almost went into a career in the FBI. I was going to do Michigan State Police to go into the FBI after about 5 or 6 years because I was having a hard time getting my first TV job. And so I was about to give up on it. And my stepdad is FBI retired, and my mom was FBI. And my sister's Customs, my oldest sister, my younger sister is Michigan State Police. So, I mean, I'm not kidding when I tell you I'm law enforcement. So law enforcement's near and dear to my heart. So that's something I have a lot of passion for. When I was a kid, I was going to be a truck driver, like my granddad, who was in the Air Force. And then after the Air Force, then he hauled cars from Detroit, Michigan. And so I always wanted to have a big Peterbilt like him. And to this day, that's when I'm going down the interstate, I always check out the trucks. And when I see a truck driver takes care of their cab, I love it. So it's just a little something you'll never know about me on TV, but now you know. Fifth grade is when I became passionate about weather because it got me out of school when it snowed. And so you might expect that with my family background, I was raised in outside of Washington, D.C. So my mom and my stepdad worked at the FBI Academy in Quantico at the Marine base. And then my father was at headquarters in D.C. And so I was raised in Northern Virginia, and we got a little bit more snow there than down here. And so I would get out of school on a regular basis because of it. And so I became the school weatherman and would watch the Weather Channel. I'd get all the forecasts, which, by the way, next weekend I'll be out in Bay St. Louis. I'm going to meet Jim Cantori. So that's I'm going for a big hurricane season party with a hurricane chaser. And so that's something I'm looking because I'm going to fanboy. Jim Cantori got me hooked on weather with the Weather Channel and all the originals back in the 80s. And so it grew through high school, and I actually have some pictures that are going to be coming up of high school, but it was getting really pretty serious, and that's when I knew I wanted to be on TV. And so I'm doing what I love, and been doing it from Harrisonburg, Virginia, where I started in the Shenandoah Valley, tiny little TV station, to Charlotte, North Carolina. I was there for 8 years. Then I went to Tampa, Florida, to Kansas City, Missouri, and here to San Antonio. And so it's a little bit like a military career where you feel like you're getting stationed. But that's the career path that I chose because I was a weekend guy to a morning guy. Then I had people that were going to be retiring above me, so I'd have to move if I wanted to be a chief meteorologist. So I worked my way. Here I am to San Antonio, and this is where I hope to retire. So putting in roots, been here now working on 8 years, and so and I absolutely love it. All right, so my presentation here. Um, see if we can. So first things first, let me see if I can back this up. That's my team right there. So that's Mandy and Jonathan and Don. This young man here, that's your book picture right there. That's me. Uh, so to my side, there is my science teacher, Chuck Drake, with my school principal. And on this day, we had a ribbon cutting ceremony in my high school because we had the first weather center in the country for a public high school. And the Weather Channel had come up to do a story on it. On this particular day, Washington, D.C., the NBC News came to our school to do a story on it with our chief meteorologist, who I just thought the world of, and that was Bob Ryan. And Bob is since retired, but I'm nervous as all get out there. He's asking me what I'm looking at. I'm showing him a satellite photograph of an occluded wave, and uh, and I was breaking it down for him, and he goes, "That's fantastic, young man." And but I'm thinking like, "Oh my gosh, I'm talking to Bob Ryan." And then I met him one day years later when I was in the business at a conference, and I went up to him and I told him who I was. I said, "You probably don't remember me." He goes, "Actually, I do remember you from C.D. Hilton High School," and that just made my day. So I got to meet him as a fellow meteorologist in the business, and now he's retired, and I'll be following in right behind him one of these days. But that's yearbook pictures, a day I'll never remember and then or forget. And then here I am today, talking about spaghetti plot models all over the place, right? So, I wanted to touch on our rainfall situation with y'all. And this is a presentation. This is a few months back. But you could see that that was last year. It was another awful year for us. We were down over 6 inches of rain. In to put perspective, this goes back to 2020 for us here with the rainfall that we have lost in this vicious cycle we've been in. Actually, you can go back to 2019. But this just goes back to January of 2020. And this year now, because of last week, we're a little over an inch behind. We chopped into that yearly deficit quite a bit. But you get the idea when you factor in this year to 2020, we've lost about 52, 53 inches of rainfall. And it's no wonder when you look at the aquifer levels, the lake levels, the misery that our area is enduring here. Through that stretch, well, here you have Canyon Lake going back historically. Of course, the lake was built in the 60s with the dam. So it doesn't have the test of the 50s, which Medina Lake has. The 50s was notorious, one of the worst droughts ever for this region in recorded time. But this is the most recent check as of May 28th. I just checked it before coming up here. We're now Canyon Lake's at 45.4% full. So from last week, we brought it up 3 to 5 inches. Really going to need an epic flood event to really think about some significant recovery with Canyon Lake, unless you're somehow able to sustain weeks on end, months on end of these periodic rains like we had last week to build river momentum to power it up. But that's just not going to be the case. So after all that rain, we got inches of recovery there. Medina Lake did come up a foot as of today, and Lake Amistad is slowly climbing. Lake Travis actually came up 2 feet from what you see there. So we did get a little bit of recovery, but it's not that recovery that everyone wants to see. I feel as it's just small victories, and it's just nice to be able to finally look at a lake level and not see a daily drop, which is where we've been. But it's going to start doing that again here because of the pattern we're going into now. Of course, through this stretch, you'll often hear us talk about El Nino or La Nina. Well, in Texas, La Nina is just the arch nemesis for us here. I mean, there's always an exception, but in general, the rule of thumb is that cooler than water Pacific water doesn't really translate well for us. We want El Nino, and El Nino is good in the wintertime to spring. It's not during the summer, fall. Its impact for us potentially is always for the winter season. So you'll see us celebrate El Nino uh, because of what it can bring for us in the winter season with the rains and the spring rains. But we've had four of them during this stretch since 2020, La Ninas. And this is just kind of shows going back to 2012. The uh, the blue is La Nina. And so we had an El Nino, and that brought us a record rain in January of 2024. But then, and we had a couple other decent months, but we didn't get the big time rain that we were hoping for. We kind of lost an opportunity on that. And this just shows you a comparison of the two, the typical pattern, the top, that would be a El Nino event. So the storm track is right over Texas through the winter season to spring. And we do really quite well through the southern tier of the country. But La Nina shifts the track, and we end up drier and warmer with our winters. But there are always exceptions. 2021, we wound up having a very cold period there, the Arctic, what I call the Arctic apocalypse. That was like, the misery factor was something that I'll always remember in my career. And but then that was followed by a severe weather season in 2021 that brought us some really big rain, but it also brought a lot of destructive storms and the 6.4-inch hailstone in Medina County. So La Nina can pump up your severe weather season, but there's that, obviously, if we're getting the storms, we're going to be getting rain too. And that's how 2021 wound up being our only surplus year out of the recent years going back to last surplus year, I think it was 2018. 2019 was behind by about 6 or 7 inches. The forecast ahead is we're neutral now. We're ENSO neutral. And so that means kind of like flip of the coin. We call it equal chances for our rain. So it's better than being in La Nina. That said, La Nina does favor an active hurricane season. So the season we have is just slightly above normal because of our conditions, but other factors too, the ocean water temperatures, activity expected with the African monsoon. The blue bar is La Nina. So you see it's going to try to come back again late this year into early next year. But forecast right now is to lean towards keeping it neutral. And you see El Nino never really gets any traction here in the forecast probabilities. Switching over to thunderstorms. And by the way, what's my cutoff time? I didn't even ask when I started this. Till noon or 12? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. So we got a lot of time here. So one thing I wanted to share with you was severe weather, but also storm chasing. I've been a storm chaser for over 10 years, and do it not only because of there's an adrenaline pump that comes when you're chasing down thunderstorms. It's the beauty and the science of figuring out where the storm will form, the conditions that will allow for the formation, the triggers that may get it to go, and then the maintenance of those storms to strengthen them up. It's a complex game, if you will, but you always learn. It always teaches you. You never have learned everything in weather. You're always learning. And so when you think you know everything, you'll go out on a storm chase and you'll realize that a couple of different factors maybe played into something. You're like, wow, and you always remember that. So I love that for the science aspect. And then when I go on TV with wall-to-wall warnings, I always feel like I can bring extra background because I could tell you what that neighborhood's enduring, what they're hearing, seeing, probably what they smell. All your senses are tingling when you do a storm chase. And my wife found that out. I took her out to Fort Stockton a few years back, and she's like her dad, she's a science nut, and she just loves it, eats it up. And she's like, wow, I have a greater, she always watched it on TV, all the storm chasing. Man, it's phenomenal in person. So this cell here that's a picture from Wolf Stadium looking down towards Pleasanton, where it looked like Atascosa County ceased to exist on that day. That was a big bomb going off, but that was a massive supercell storm at sunset. And I just thought it was a phenomenal picture. Had golf ball to egg size hail on that, but that's what everyone was seeing at the baseball game, was that big storm. Of course, the cell of interest is the supercell storm. And so sometimes people say, you call it a supercell. Is that like, super duper cell? Or, it's just a way of distinguishing a general thunderstorm to one that has taken advantage of all prime ingredients to become just extra powerful and has the ability to go for a long time. That's a combination of instability and wind shear. So instability is the properties to keep that parcel of air rising to tower up in that cumulus cloud. But thunderstorms will rain themselves out. You get the downdraft, the rain shaft, and that chokes off the inflow into those storms. So a supercell takes advantage of wind, either strengthening wind with height, which called speed shear, or change of direction, and it rotates the updraft and then it sort of tilts it so the rain falls here while the inflow of the storm is back into the storm is back here. It's a perfect engine, and it can go from county to county, cross state lines, and long track tornadoes, drop big hail. Um, this is a day I was out in Kansas on the dry line storm chasing, and these big storms were going up. So I saved that satellite image from that day. I just saw hail. I didn't see a tornado on that day, but you could see how the dry line was erupting. It was kind of like unzipping down the dry line and forming those big thunderstorms. This is when I took my wife out in 2022. So we had just finished having Subway lunch, and we were doing the final look at the charts and see if everything was on schedule. And that first little thunderstorm started going. I said, it's time to go. So you can see us heading north from Fort Stockton. And then we got a warning on it. And you're thinking, oh, here we go. And it was looking pretty good. But then you see a couple of other cells that were developing to the south of it. And I pulled over off the side of the road. And my wife said, well, what are you doing? Because you're losing. If you're stopped and you're not going, you're going to lose the ability to track that storm. And I said, well, my hunch is that the storms to the south were going to rob the inflow into that big severe thunderstorm warning. They'd become the dominant or the dominant storm. But you saw these storm chasers flying by past us. And they just either they were all in on that thunderstorm. Sometimes you have beginners that just want to go out for the thrill of the chase, but they don't really know the science of the thunderstorms. So they're all flying by, which, by the way, police are always trying to nip that in the bud. You get a lot of speeding tickets with these chasers, and so it's a bit of a problem out there. I do not speed. I might go a few miles over, but I don't do the 80 plus garbage that they're doing. So anyway, that storm then the one to the south became the dominant supercell that we stayed on, and you can see the hook on it, and you see how we're properly positioned for safety. We're not in the hail core. There was a point where my wife got hit on the shoulder with a golf ball sized hailstone because it ejected out from the side of the hail core and hit her when we were parked on a dirt road by a gate looking at the ranch. And we could see to the west the cone tornado about 10, 11 miles away. And so I thought we were safe from the hail core. And, a couple of these random stones started dropping down. We got back in our truck and went south. But she got a big goose egg knot on her shoulder from that. Those are called battle wounds. Battle wounds there. Yeah, that's a badge of honor when you get that. But then we continued to chase that storm, and we got within 3.4 miles of the big tall cone that you see here. It actually became a stovepipe where it's the same width all the way up. But we were at the time we were watching this, we were also the inflow wind into the storm was hitting about 50, 60 miles an hour. So you're having a hard time standing as the storm's like a vacuum, it's just sucking in that warm, humid air. Just an awesome experience. And you celebrate a tornado like this because you don't see buildings. It's like, the surface of Mars out there in West Texas. So in this case here, you could cheer it. But one of my pet peeves with storm chasers, where you'll see buildings and stuff, and you hear them, oh my gosh, yeah, this is great. And I just think that's the worst, put people first over storms. So, but this kind of a scenario when there's nothing out there but just ranch and, snakes, ranch land with this, scrub brush, I'll celebrate it. I don't know if this is going to play. There it goes. But that was the video of it. I don't think I have my audio up or something. But I'm telling my wife, there she is. There you go, babe. That's a big stovepipe tornado. She said, wow. And you would hear the wind hitting us at the back. You kind of see my camera's a little shaky there. But storm chasing, I'll tell you what, it's a dangerous business. One of the rules is you don't ever core punch a storm, which means when you're trying to stay on it, you look at a map to see what roads will keep you on the storm. And sometimes you are tempted as a storm chaser to take shortcuts, maybe punch through the core of the storm to get in a good position to see that tornado. And so I teamed up with the National Weather Service in Kansas City when I worked there to help them do safety webinars on storm chasing, because they would do one for every county of their what they call the county warn area, CWA. So I would pick off some of those counties to help them out, and they gave me some material that I could show, some great stuff. But so you never core punch because you're going to go through the hail core. Now some chasers love to do that. Reed Timmer, and he's notorious for renting a vehicle and then blowing it up, through giant hail. And then, he gets the YouTube, views and it monetizes on social media. But that's his big thing is to blow out windshields. Well, for most chasers, though, you don't want to have your car destroyed. And then you can often go from the hail core into a tornado as they're co-located. So when you see that green sky, you've ever heard about the green sky, that's the hail in the storm, the hail pouch, and the tornado will often be located close to it. So that's why one of the reasons why, two reasons why you don't core punch. The other one is going down dirt roads. Sometimes roads are not paved out in the central and southern plains. You're tempted to go down a dirt road and then rain hits it and turns into a mud bog and you spin out. Um, this particular tornado was over 2 miles wide with the mesocyclone, big wedge, and it had a number of what we call satellite tornadoes spinning around it in Oklahoma. And that's incredibly dangerous because instead of just keying on one tornado and where you are in relation to it, it's constantly spinning up like little moons, orbiting the main tornado. And you could be as safe as you want, and that little guy is going to spin around maybe an EF1 or EF2, and it's going to do some damage to you. And it killed some storm chasers. And one of them was Tim Samaras. That was his car. And he was like uh, one of the you know, I mean, top of the line research scientist with tornadoes and getting instrumentation into them. And he was with his son, who was killed too, I believe. But I'd never met Tim, but I was good friends with one of his best friends, uh, Al Patrica with the Weather Service. And I remember going to Al's place with his wife, who was also a meteorologist in Missouri. And I just had some beers with him, sat by him, had a bonfire, and I just listened to him talk. And he was just distraught by this here, that Tim always was safety first. That's how wicked that El Reno tornado was. It was a satellite tornado that spun around, and they couldn't escape it, and it launched their vehicle and crushed it. So it's a dangerous game. It really is. This was last week. This is a supercell that hit Austin. And so this made a lot of news. It came crushing in with a 70 to 85 mile an hour microburst winds, and it dropped hail in some cases 2 to 3 feet deep. But that purple shade, that's the hail inside the storm. You see the little notch. That's what we call the inflow notch, where air is sucking into the storm. You see kind of the V shape at the top. That's because that's the tall updraft on the storm, and the winds in the upper levels of the atmosphere hit that updraft and kind of go around it. You can't go through the updraft, so you go around it, and it carries the rain around. It creates a V notch look on the radar. But that's just a textbook supercell storm. And this is the hail that dropped in one of the neighborhoods there. You see people are out with shovels. It was about 2 to 3 feet deep. And some of the hail and from that storm was actually larger than golf balls. This one here, it was mainly small hail, but just a tremendous amount of hail. And even Bergstrom Airport had some damage from that storm. This is a supercell in person. Looks like a UFO. We call it the mothership or the barrel. But that's a safe way to view it. The hail and the heavy rains on the left-hand side. You see the clear skies and the sun could be out on the right, but that's the wall cloud underneath it. And if this was a video, you would see it spinning around like a UFO, like it's that Will Smith movie, Independence Day. Here's another example of one here. And you see the storm chasers pulled off taking their pictures. That's a phenomenal, I mean, that's a crazy picture to see. Looks like a fuel line into the engine, but that little sort of a scud looking cloud underneath it, that's the air sucking up into it. And then it's just the rotating updraft going up. Let's see here. See if this will play. This is a time lapse of a supercell forming. You see the tilt of the cloud. So the air flows in and it was going up, and you kind of see the cloud spinning around horizontally. And this was up in South Dakota, I believe. This will re-rack. And if you look closely at the bottom, as this resets, you might be able to see, you can see the air flowing up into the base there and going up. And then again, it's twisting around. Supercells will do things like this. This was in 2003. It was a 7-inch diameter hailstone, weighed 1.7 pounds. This was in Medina County in 2021, I had mentioned. I was on the air, I think, for about 2 hours with this supercell. It was coming down Highway 90 from Bracketville, Kinney County. Came across, it was a Del Rio supercell. It originated in Mexico. And then as it was coming down 90, it was insane. It was probably one of the most powerful thunderstorms I've ever been a part of on TV. Just a real wicked storm. You see the big hook on it, but it was dropping these 6+ inch hailstones. The young man that's holding that, his name is Evan. I met him at a school visit in Dehennis, and he came up to me and says, "I was the young man holding that hailstone, and it got famous from it." And so then you see the blue scan in the lower right. That's a laser scan of that hailstone. So we have a permanent record of it, which is done for research purposes. And you always can call it up, and then you could go back and pull up computer charts of the atmosphere that day, and you could do a lot of studies on it and preserve. You always have that hailstone preserved. That was the record. And I think last year, I haven't seen the state climatologist in the committee verify it yet for some reason, but Val Castor, who's a storm chaser out of Oklahoma City, was in our panhandle and found a 7.25-inch hailstone, like a pineapple size. So poor Evan no longer has a state record as far as I know. I think he's second place. And it put holes through roofs and right into the family living room. This is in Sabinal, that storm. The gentleman here is one of my 4-zone weather watchers, and hailstone right into his family room. So it's falling over 100 miles an hour. So if it clunks you on the head, it's going to leave a mark. This is his ranch out in Sabinal, and you can see the impact craters. So big time business there. There's supercells, and hail is the number one question. If I have severe weather, people don't, they don't ask me about tornadoes unless they've moved here from a region that gets a lot of tornadoes, maybe North Texas or Oklahoma, and they're new to San Antonio. Is this going to be tornadoes? But San Antonians ask me if there's going to be hail. It's the dominant question. This is in Kansas. Their state record is almost 8 inches across. And there you can see a putting green on the golf course, and then you can see in the rough all the golf balls. There's a soccer ball there for scale. So storm chasing, we look at types of clouds. They'll talk to you. This cloud here, it looks like a beaver tail. That's what we call it, a beaver tail. But that tells us the air is flowing into the storm from the right side, and it goes up into the storm. And then you'd want to look in that lower left. That's where you would have the possibility of a descending tornado there. That's where you have the sort of the spin, the occlusion in the storm, where you have the maximum spin. This is a wall cloud. So to the left of the road, that lowering, that's where you would want to look. And again, you see this is the backside of the storm. So you see the sky's clear on the left-hand side, then the hail and heavy rains on the right side. And so awesome shot there. This is a whale's mouth or a shelf cloud. These are very common with thunderstorms. As the rain-cooled air rushes towards you, you'll see this ominous-looking linear cloud above the horizon line. Then when it gets right above, and the wind kicks up, temperature drops. And they can produce tornadoes, not typically your big wedges or massive tornadoes, but they can produce some strong tornadoes, but not like the true supercells typically. Then you get just little angry, scary-looking clouds, scud clouds that kind of hang beneath the whale's mouth, the upper lip, and then you get wind down below it that kicks up dirt, and so sometimes people think they got a tornado, and that's not a tornado. Another picture of a shelf cloud. And then this is a friend of mine, Derek, with the Weather Service. He made up this chart and gave it to me, but for my school visits, but I love it. And you can see again, the rain-cooled air hits the ground, rushes out, and it creates that shelf. This is, I think, this is a ranch time lapse of a shelf cloud forming with a thunderstorm approaching the camera. And so you'll see how fast, when the thunderstorm matures, there it is. That's the shelf cloud. When I show kids this, they go, oh, look at that. Oh my gosh. But there you have a shelf cloud, and you see the turbulence in the sky boiling underneath it. In some cases, with severe thunderstorm warnings, you'll hear us talk about microburst, downburst potential. You can get a layer of dry air up into the storm, which is causing evaporation, and that's a cooling process. And then you get a pocket of dense air, heavy dense air that will descend out of the storm, hits the ground, it can't go through the ground, so it starts bulldozing out, and that's a microburst. So this video here is from Duke Energy in Charlotte, North Carolina, where I worked for 8 years. This is after I had moved. A friend of mine was a meteorologist with Duke Energy, Mike Dross, and he sent me this video from one of their surveillance cameras. This is like looking at it in real time. That's the beauty of this video. So in the background is Interstate 85, which goes from Charlotte down to Atlanta. And this storm produced 12 miles of damage, mainly straight line winds, although there were a couple of tornadoes that were surveyed along the damage path. This is not going to be a tornado you're going to see. This is going to be downburst winds. And so this is not it. This is just a leading edge of the storm. There's a couple drops that hit the camera lens there, the shield protecting the camera. And then it kind of lets up, and you see the traffic again on Interstate 85. But off in the distance on the other side of Interstate 85 is this wall of wind that's going to hit this camera. And this is just a very good textbook demonstration of the power of these downburst winds, like we saw last week in Austin when we had 77-mile-an-hour winds in Bergstrom. This here is going to be top end 80-mile-an-hour winds based on the survey. It's getting close. So as it's coming, you'll start seeing all the trees up top. They're going to start to go. So that's a severe thunderstorm warning for downburst winds, and there it is verifying. You'll see a couple more trees are going to go here, just causing an absolute mess. This went on, like I said, about 8 to 12 miles. And then you see how the wind kind of lets up, and you just get like remnant leaves falling down to the ground. And the inclination is to say, boy, a tornado came through, and that's what the TV stations and 911 emergency calls, people are just trying to get the word out. Tornadoes coming through, and but you'll notice how all the trees fell in one direction. So that's straight line winds. We call that a divergent pattern. So when you go out and you look at the survey of the damage, and you see all the trees kind of Ving out straight, that's a vortex would have convergent pattern, and straight line winds is divergent out. And so that was a really easy survey for the meteorologist. And then you look at what we call damage indicators to rate how strong those winds were. So years of research, we know how much wind it takes to do certain things. And like, so common question I'll get is, well, those SUVs, they didn't move or anything. And that's because, and I've been in wind like that with an SUV, and you feel like you're getting ready to go flying, rocking and rolling. But you really got, for something of that size and weight, you got to be up around about 120, I would say. Small little car, maybe 105, 110, you could start launching a car into the air. This was a tornado outside of New Orleans, well, in the city limits, but not near downtown. But I like this versus straight line versus a vortex. And then what's funny about this video is, and I shouldn't say maybe funny, but it's the irony is I'll say, here's the tornado, get to your safe room. If you're in the path, that means for everyone, get your camera and go record video of it. And so I can only do what I can do, and you're on your own, you make adult decisions. But this is some folks that are on the porch. This is about 1.5 to 2 blocks away. So they were lucky. Because sometimes, you think there's a tornado that's slow moving. Well, it's actually coming right at you. If it doesn't look like it's moving across the horizon, it's coming towards you. Anyway, this is an EF3 tornado. You'll see the power flashes and just an ominous sky from it. And you don't really hear the roaring sound because my audio is not playing here. But so that was wind of about 160 to 165 on that tornado. Did a lot of damage. I always spend some time going over the watches and warnings with kids. And then you have the EF scale from EF0, which is 65 to 85-mile-an-hour winds. And you see the pictures correlating to the damage on the right-hand side. So, shingles on the roof, some branches, some tree damage. You get to EF5, and that's maximum level damage. This is when I was in Kansas City. I was on the air for almost 5 hours straight. And we had 5 tornadoes, and we had a lot of straight line wind damage. But this is in Sibley, Missouri. And the gentleman I was telling you about earlier, Al Patrico, who's a friend of mine with the Weather Service in Pleasant Hill, Missouri, went out to do the survey. You see the car flipped over. So he said that was about 115 to 120. And then you see that's a mobile home on the right side. It was wrapped into a tree. So that gave a damage indicator of 127. And the family was not home, but when they came home, that's what they found. This is in Kentucky a couple of years back. Refrigerator up in a tree. You see the missiles boards stuck into a side of a home. So a lot of times you think about tornadoes, and getting launched and go for a ride like the Wizard of Oz with Dorothy and Toto, but you're thinking about debris. So when you tell people to get to your safe room, take pillows and blankets. If I know there's a big tornado in a neighborhood, I'll tell people, put your helmets on, bicycle helmets. I ride a motorcycle. I'm going to be wearing my motorcycle helmet, whatever it takes to survive it. And so sometimes people think, boy, you're really getting pretty extreme with it. But you can see if you got boards going through, walls of homes and, impaling a car like this, you probably want some head protection there. That was a big EF4 wedge. That was the tornado that did that in Mississippi. And a wedge is wider than it is tall. That's a wedge tornado. More damage here from Rolling Fork. Joplin in 2011 was a famous tornado for all the wrong reasons. This killed, I think, 162 people. And um, it was interesting because we did a lot of case studies on this. This is the big hook. And you see that purple shading over Joplin. If you have to have probably a good eye to see it. That purple shade, that's debris that was over Joplin. So the radar beam is hitting parts of buildings and trees, and it thinks it's raindrops, so it paints a purple pixels, boxes. And so as meteorologists, your heart drops when you see that signature over a town because you know there's immense damage happening. And that was the tornado that caused that destruction. Testimony from people that witnessed it said, "Look, just looked like a cloud touching the ground." You're driving through that storm.
On the other, oh. I was headed out of the tollway on the east side of Seguin that goes around Austin. And then the sky turned avocado green and the wind was coming sideways. And I couldn't get off the tollway.
Were you talking about the Austin storm last week?
No, this one.
This is from 2011. This is in
Yes.
Missouri.
Yes.
You said Seguin, though.
Well, hang on. Before I hit that area, it was coming.
Oh, so
This-
you were in Missouri, though.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, this is the wrong one.
Yeah,
Okay.
this is in Joplin, Missouri.
Yeah, it was Gerald.
Oh, Gerald, that's called the Dead Man Walking tornado.
Yes.
Gerald, that was an F5.
But that was Gerald.
Yeah, they call it that because the vortices inside the tornado look like a man walking inside the tornado. So it had that look to it.
People inside their cars and in different places and recording what happened to them. I had no idea that a tornado could suck someone out of a car.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. This is well over 200-mile-an-hour winds, and the suction power of these things is phenomenal.
Well, it was really interesting and scary.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It was what we found too was that not only were people, a lot of times your tendency is I want to look and I want to see it, know what my danger level is that's coming at me. And I'm going to make decisions based on what I see. So some of the people looked and they just said, well, that's just a giant cloud touching the ground because the cloud bases that day were really low. It wasn't like a high cloud base. So it just looked like it was really humid. And that was the big wedge. The other thing was we found is that the sirens are going off and people started not listening to the sirens because for years, sirens would go off, never saw a tornado. So you just like, there they go again. And so no one was taking it seriously. And they got sort of fatigue, siren fatigue. And then this thing hit and it was a direct hit on town. And this was damage from it there. And so just absolutely obliterated everything, hit the hospital. And again, 162 people lost their lives in that tornado. This was outside of Tyler, Texas, and kind of hard to see the tornado here because it's wrapped in so much rain. But we are able with radar. I could be on TV and I can tell you the signatures if I see a debris signature, where this rotation is, and zoom in on the streets. And you try to do your best to use that radar data to kind of keep people ahead of the weather. And I've had that in Bexar County 4 or 5 years ago, I believe. We had Northwest Bexar County. We had a tornado was on the ground heading towards Stone Oak. And so I was zoomed in, street level mapping. I had my wife and our sons in our safe room because it was coming by. We live in Stone Oak. And they were under there for about 25 minutes. This is one of our radars. This is just one of many radars that we have around the country. We have 2 of them in Kinney County and Comal County, Guadalupe County from New Braunfels. But that's outside of Tampa, and that's a shelf cloud coming, but that's the radar that's inside. And I don't know if I'm going to play this video because there's no audio that will play for me. And that's fine because it's a long video, but I'll just tell you the story. These are storm chasers working for a television station in Iowa. And I had a storm chasing team when I worked in Kansas City where they deploy out and then they're getting you a video or on the phone doing phoners telling you they see a tornado. So this was a radar indicated tornado. So you don't know if there's one yet. And they're scrambling to get in a good position to see it. for the information so the TV station could go on air and say, yep, we got a tornado. Get to your safe room. It's been confirmed by our storm chasers. So they're driving through, they're getting dime-sized hail starts hitting the windshield. They're looking at their tablet, the radar data. The passenger's also on the phone to the meteorologist television station saying, yeah, hold on, man, hold on. We're trying to figure this out because they start realizing that they're in a dangerous area. And they stop here and they're looking now at radar, trying to figure everything out. You see leaves.
I'm ready to go anytime that these guys want.
We seriously have tree limbs falling on us. There's got to be a rain wrap tornado
on the windshield. And so they're telling the meteorologist, you got to get on the air, man. We got debris falling from the sky. And then he says right about here, he says, people should not be driving because they're going to see a motorist, right? Which is, I always find it to be ironic. Right there is where he says it. Now they're going to turn the camera and there's a bleeped out cuss word here too. So I always have to talk really loud with the kids. I don't want them to even hear the bleep. But you'll see the leaves and everything coming at the windshield. There goes a car. And now they're going to turn. They're going to follow that car. But you see the leaves coming at them now. And then they're going to go down a little bit further. Now they're just doing nothing but driving into it now at this point. That street sign is going to go flying here in just a second. You'll see that. And that's when they stop because they're in the tornado. So watch that street sign there. Boop, that's it. And now they're in it, and you hear sticks and rocks hitting their car. They say their ears are popping because there's a big drop in pressure under in a tornado because it's low pressure. And then they're going to get in the backside of the tornado, which is going to start to turn their car. And they're reporting that winds are probably 100 miles an hour at this point because it was starting to turn the car. It was never strong enough to launch them into a field next to the road. And they were really fortunate because just a couple miles down the road, it strengthened to 145. It was an EF3, and 7 people lost their lives in it. But they were in it. That's called core punching. This is rule 2: don't go down dirt roads. So that's a law enforcement preventing people from going down the dirt road. Unless you have 4-wheel drive, you could do it. And then the storm chaser's taking pictures because they're laughing because he's in reverse, going, "Oh my gosh, it's coming right at me." And then this tornado here, this is in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. This is an EF4. This one I think was around 180, 185. But you'll see the little vortices wrapping around it. This one you see it on the outside of the parent tornado. You get them on the outside, but you also get them on the inside. So there's truth in the movie Twister, the grand finale, where you look up and you see all the little snakes, inside, spinning around. Those are the vortices. But this one here, this was even closer than that one that was in New Orleans. This is about a half block away when it passes by this gentleman's home. So he's speaking in Spanish, telling everyone to get to the bathroom and his family, and then he's going to record video. And just about a half block to a block away was just complete damage. But you'll see the outside periphery of this tornado when it passes by, the suction power of it. And so now he's going to get a better view. I think he's going to open up the door here so you can hear the audio. And it's really roaring. But you'll see it's like a Hoover vacuum when it goes by. You'll see everything just you'll suck into it. Now he's safe because now he's on the other side of the window. He closed the door. All right, now you can really watch those trees interact with this tornado. And this is probably top end on the outside, probably about 75, 80 mile an hour wind you'll see here. Start watching now you're going to see the vacuum effect. Sucking everything in right there. And then he pulls back, goes, "Oh, that might be a little bit too close." And then he'll go back out, and the wind is completely stopped. And so, but that was Tuscaloosa. And again, that was around 180, 185, about a half block, 1 block away. Tornadoes, when they form, you really can't see them at first. You can hear them, but they got to pick up dirt, debris. You also get condensation that occurs as air rises up into that tornado with the low pressure, and it'll form a funnel. And so there you see what looks like a little baby tornado, but it's actually about 2 to 3 times as wide. You look at the debris cloud at the base, and it gives you a better indicator of how wide it is. There's a cone tornado. This is the stovepipe. It's the same width all the way up. That's the elephant trunk tornado. And this is the big wedge. This is in Greensburg, Kansas. This one here, we actually measured 75 feet above ground level with radar on wheels, Doppler on wheels, 339 mile an hour wind. about 75 feet up. So most powerful wind we've measured with that radar. And it totally destroyed the town, but the town has since built back. They're actually better than ever. But these are pictures from Greensburg. You see the board through the car there in the back. Here's a piece of straw or hay that was stuck into a tree. This is why the kitchen's not a safe place to be. You know, the fork in the tree there. And then this family chose, they had two options in their home, the closet or the bathroom. They were all in the bathroom. And that's a close look where they survived that storm. So, um, and this is something I pass on to school kids. So talking about safety and doing storm chasing and the oohs and ahs, but also trying to impress on them safety for their lives as they move forward. Because you never know as adults where they're going to live, and you know they're going to live in Tornado Alley, all things that they'll remember. Hurricane. This is Katrina from 2005, and this is just a nice little animation of one I just to show the clear out in the eye. That's air that sinks. And when air sinks, it dries out. So that's how you can have a beautiful beach day in the middle of a hurricane eye, but you're surrounded by that eye wall with the vicious winds. This was Ian in, oh, now this is a couple years ago, but this is the radar view of it. And I always remember Ian because and it was upgraded to a Cat 5 after post analysis. But my family, my father, I told you about, he, with my stepmom, they retired and they live in Sarasota. And, um, and then up the road is my mother, my stepdad, 1 hour away. So I got all my parents within an hour. But my father was up because I have my youngest sister who was a little surprise in the family, but she's very young. You know, she's in the Air Force as a nurse now at Elmendorf in Anchorage, Alaska. So I'm going to go see her in a couple weeks for family vacation. But she was graduating James Madison University, and it was a graduation or maybe it was like family weekend. So they were up in Virginia well before Ian. But then I was telling my family about Ian coming, and my father's got to be kidding me. You know, well, at least we're not there because if you lose power and you have a week or two, 3 weeks of misery, they're safe. They're up in Virginia. But then my father's sweating bullets that they're not going to have a home when they come back. So I remember on the morning of Ian coming in, it was it was getting stronger and stronger, and it was going more north. I could see the eye wall was getting closer to a pass with my folks' house. My heart dropped that morning when I woke up and I looked at Ian, and I said, "Dad, I don't know if anything's going to be left." They got really fortunate. They had a little bit of damage in their neighborhood, but just a short distance away, there was quite a bit of damage from the eye wall. But I'll always remember that radar loop and that animation. This is storm chasers flying into it, Ian, and we fly into hurricanes much like you go to the doctor for a physical or a checkup, and we want to see how you're doing. We get the vitals on hurricanes by flying into them, and then we do data collection that you could put in supercomputers to simulate what a hurricane may do, where it may go. So what they do is unbelievably important in our mission to inform people on what a storm is going to do and where it's going to go. In this case here, this is one of the worst flights and they've ever experienced. At a conference I was at last year, hurricane hunters that flew into Ian said they dropped about almost 1,000 feet in a very short amount of time from the turbulence inside that hurricane, and actually scrubbed some missions. And that one where they dropped, they scrubbed the mission and they went back to base, which I think was Lackland at the time. Not Lackland, Lakeland, Florida, is I think where they were launching out of the Lakeland Airport in Florida. But anyway, you could see the sun up in it in the eye. That's the stadium effect of the eye wall inside that hurricane. This gentleman here is going to drop a little tube down, which is going to open with a parachute, and it's going to take readings as it drops down below the aircraft on the atmosphere inside the hurricane. He's monitoring radar, talking to the pilots. They're also data collecting the radars on the aircraft. And so very important for data collection, but also safety with the pilots. This is a chart I was looking at where I was telling everyone this is not going to be Harvey coming across and paying us a visit. So I could see the big trough, that sort of U shape, the cooler colors, was pulling and going to pick it and slingshot it over Florida. This is the wind at 18, 20,000 feet up, and you could see that U shape was pulling on Ian. So these storms are incredibly vulnerable to the winds, the currents. Harvey came in, and then the winds collapsed, and it just stalled. And then the winds picked up enough to kind of push it back over the Gulf, and then they stopped, and then it started drifting north. So it's like being out rudderless out on the lake, and you're just at the mercy of whichever direction you get, like little, what do you call those, little sunfish sailboats, wherever, just sitting out there, and the wind blows this way, whoop, you go that way. That's the way hurricanes are. They're directionless. And of course, Harvey dropped, tremendous rain. That was the picture of Harvey coming in at landfall, is a major hurricane. Rockport to Port Aransas, some of the damage from it produced a 10 to 12 foot storm surge. And then the legacy is, you see the line, and if you can see the line, I'm not sure. It came up, stalled, and then went back, and it dropped over 60 inches of rain, which is a United States record for a storm. Southeast Texas, Louisiana. This was Michael in 2018, which became a Cat 5 hurricane. Michael was interesting because it was forecast to strengthen, but every forecast update was it was going to be stronger in the next update. Next thing you know, it was a Cat 5. Went right over Tyndall Air Force Base. This is damage from Michael. Freight train knocked over on the railroad tracks. So that's when we knew we had a Cat 5 hurricane. And then this hurricane is when I was in high school in 1992. This was Andrew hit South Florida, and this is when I remember I was watching Dan Rather at the time. He was doing nonstop coverage of South Florida and the hurricane coming in. It was between Dan Rather and the Weather Channel for me when I was in high school. And I like Peter Jennings too. So, but anyway, this is taking me back. Sorry, I'm having a moment here. I'm just going back to my youth. Anyway, Wicked Storm. When I worked in Tampa, we did hurricane specials because we're on the coast. So if San Antonio was on the coast, we would have hurricane specials on News 4 every year. But so one of my stories was survivors of Andrew, and they were still seeking therapy years later. This special was in 2009. So we're talking about more than 15 years later, because they remember the night, hunkered down, the sound of power poles snapping and homes crumbling, and they were in it for hours with this. It depends on the speed of the storm, how long you have to endure that wind. And they were listening to their, radios because some of the TV stations were knocked out. So that's where Brian Norcross, I think, became famous for it. They lost power, so he was on the radio talking to people. But big impression on me was listening to the survivors of Andrew talking about their experience in it. This gentleman here is storm chasing on Charlie. It was supposed to hit Tampa, Florida, and then it did a right turn, went over ultimately Port Charlotte to Disney World. So he's going to be right next to a side of a cinder block building by a gas station, and you just see the wind inside the eye wall. And this is an edited clip, but there's massive roar sound here. But these are 135-mile-an-hour winds. And so you can just imagine, this is an edited clip, but being in this for 10, 20, 25 minutes, where a tornado is in and out. 20 seconds is a long time in a tornado. But you can imagine how it's a compound impression on you when you're in it for such a long period of time, that wind. And then last but not least, because I know I'm out of time now here, lightning is, the golden rule I always tell kids: don't stand underneath trees. There have been projects and attempts to, and they've all failed. So it's just too powerful, way too powerful.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's been all kinds of things thinking about seeding to disrupt, anything you could do to disrupt. There was even talk about transporting icebergs down into the paths of these things to cool the water. But there's such enormous beasts. About the only thing I think we can do, there's some science research, is we can cloud seed to perhaps subdue a thunderstorm. And so I know that because Joe DiCarlo, who's my weekend meteorologist, his wife she's a meteorologist too. They're a private company out of Pleasanton, and they seed for some of the ranchers around our area. And they have contracts to New Mexico. So they'll go out and they'll seed cumulus clouds if the atmosphere looks supportive to try to make it rain. And I've always told them, I said, Joe, he'll tell me that he'll look at FlightAware and he's like, yep, they're flying. They're on their way over to Floresville, in Wilson County. They're going to seed. And I almost said something on air. It was not long ago. It was SeaWorld got a big thunderstorm with hail. And I was going to say that they were seeding south of Medina Lake. They were in Medina County. But that shower then turned into a big thunderstorm that dropped golf ball plus size hail around SeaWorld and went down 151. I was like, had I said something about cloud seeding, and then you get that thunderstorm, the liability issues. People are going to connect the dots. But Bria says apparently that they found through research that if they seed, it actually will weaken a thunderstorm, but it's very dangerous for them to fly into a thunderstorm in order to seed it. So that was kind of an interesting a little nugget from him on that. Um, but we do seed. So if anyone ever asks, and say, that's actual science that does happen, seeding to make it rain. Bear County does not have a contract with that company, so there's no seeding over Bear County. But yeah, we're not able to control hurricanes, so they're too powerful. That's enormous amount of energy released from a hurricane. This is 50,000 degrees Fahrenheit right here, 5 times hotter than the surface of the sun, and about 100 million to a billion volts of electricity, depending on the type of lightning bolt. And so that's why I always tell kids, like, listen, tree, not a good idea. Lightning's lazy. And so if, likes to strike tall objects, is what I tell them. I said, if you're underneath that tree, to stay dry. And I did that back in kindergarten with my buddy Philip. We were playing trucks at his house, and we had these giant oak trees in Virginia, and it was just pouring and booming thunder, and we were underneath that like an umbrella. And when I went home, first of all, my father gave me the business. What are you doing out in that thunderstorm, young man? And you're not even wet. Where were you? Because I know you're out there playing with Philip. I said, well, we were underneath an oak tree, and I just got this big talking to that I'll never forget. And he was right. My dad was right. But anyway, this here is a lightning, a strike on a tree. You can see how fast it happens. And you can see the camera shaking. That's usually a change of pants right there. That's required after that. I'll give you a bolt charge. This here is Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That's a bad intersection to be at there with your colleagues going for lunch. Luxor Casino in Vegas. That's the time to play the quarter slots. This is the bolt from the blue. This is the reason why I will always say, let that thunderstorm pass before you go back out to your activities, whether it's golfing or maybe it's Little League with the kids. Say, the sun comes back out, but you still see lightning and you hear thunder, you're still within range. You're at the beach and you see lightning out over the Gulf. It could strike up to 10 to even over 20 miles out in extreme cases. There's such a buildup of electricity that will shoot out sideways. And it's always called a bolt from the blue. I remember when I worked in Tampa, we had a church congregation out from Lakeland, Florida. The storm passed to their south and they had sunshine, and a bolt hit their congregation out in the field, and a number of folks lost their lives. And we did a big story on it. And I was able to plot where the lightning strike occurred. I saved that data so that we could do it in the story. But the storm had passed about 8 to 10 miles to their south, and they were all saying, there was no, it was just blue. It was a sunny day. And we knew that there might have been a storm way down south, but we had the sun over us. And so it's called a bolt from the blue. That's the loudest thunder you'll ever hear. That's the type of where like echoes like counties away. And very destructive lightning too. That's often will blow up chimneys and set house fires. And that's call a positive giant, positive charge versus a negative charge lightning bolt. A lot more voltage. And this is don't stand under any trees. Rule 2 is don't touch barbed wire fencing. So all the cows were up against the barbed wire, lightning hit and traveled down. And I always tell the kids, the young kids are napping, but older kids, they get the true story on that. These two young men here, this is out, I believe, Sequoia National Park, I think is where they were. It's a famous picture, and we do a lot of weather conferences, and this picture inevitably will show up on occasion. But that was the last picture taken of these gentlemen here because lightning struck them. They had a static charge buildup of a lightning bolt gathering above them, and it hit. And the natural reaction is to smile and take a picture. In this day and age where you have social media, everyone wants to go viral. And so not long after that picture was taken, and one of them was killed. And so I don't always tell the kids that. I just say, they survived it or something. But one of them was killed. I forget which one it was. I always keep meaning to go back and research that part of the story. I forget. And I think the photographer was killed too, if I'm correct. But that was back in the day when you developed film, and that was the last picture taken. And then she was sent to the hospital critically injured. So I always make a point to tell the kids that, you do that basic science experiment with a balloon, you rub your pants, and then you see your hairs reaching out. It's the same concept on a large scale with lightning coming down. You get a big static charge building on top of your head, and your hairs want to stand up, and here I am. And so you have to react. And the number one thing you do is it doesn't happen within a second or two. It's a buildup that occurs. You just have to recognize it and then take yourself indoors. But if you can't do that, and let's say you're at one of our big, massive ranches outdoors and that happens to you, then you got to get down low. And the only reason why you wouldn't want to lie perfectly flat on the ground, because you think, well, I'll just make myself a pancake on the ground, is because if lightning hits over here, you can get a ground current that travels through and your whole body's touching the ground. So you want to have as little contact with the ground as possible, but while, to get down low. So you want to get down in a crouch position because now only your feet are touching. But then put your feet together instead of like this, even though this is easier for me to get up and down, but you can get the current travel through this foot up through my leg, through my organs, and then out this leg. That's done me no good. So you want to try to create a little shortcut where it just goes through your feet and bypasses your organs. And that's the lightning safety position if your hair ever does that. And I've been in the position one time, and I went to Sturgis motorcycle rally in 2013. So, like I said, I'm a motorcycle rider. I went with some friends, and we were at a Kid Rock concert, all right, at the Buffalo Chip. If you've ever been to Sturgis, then you would maybe be familiar. But Kid Rock concert, and it's an outdoor venue, and in the back behind the stage, you can see lightning coming into Southwest South Dakota. And it was a pretty awesome experience because you're listening to this music and there's motorcycles and there's lightning and oh my gosh, this is unbelievable. But then all of a sudden I started looking at seeing my arm hairs were starting to stand. And I noticed my friend's hair was like starting to stand a little bit. Freaked me out. And I told him, I says, everyone drop. And so we dropped down and lightning never did strike. So it was a case, maybe it was a false alarm, but I'll always remember thinking like looking down and seeing my arm hairs, my hair and my friend's hair. And, but then I had another friend, two other cases. One was a meteorologist that was my weekend meteorologist, and he was at a pool, apartment pool, and their hair started standing up with the storm approaching, and they went inside, and lightning did strike pretty close by, but they went inside a little shelter next to the pool. And the other final story was a reporter when I worked in Charlotte, John Robinson, who was a reporter anchor. And he had come in. I was organizing my slides. This is when I did school visits and actually had a wheel, slide projector wheel, and I put my slides in. And I showed him that picture. I've done this, like I said, for over 25 years. And he said, "What's the story with this picture here?" And I told him. Well, then literally within a month, he was doing the lead story for our 5 o'clock news, and the storm was off in the distance. And they had called into the weather center, and our chief meteorologist was Eric Thomas, and I was time I think it was weekends. I don't think it was. Yeah, I was weekend meteorologist there at the time. And we said, "Kill that live shot. This is too. There's a lightning hazard. They're within range." And so, but it was like 4:56, 4:55, 4:56. They're like, we're the lead story. It's big news. So they went for it, and just before we signed on the air, their hair started rising up. And John, from a month ago when I was organizing my slides, remember what I was talking about with the thunderstorm with hair standing up. So he and his photographer, they got into the live truck and lightning struck in the parking lot about like 20 yards away from them. But, and they didn't have, the story didn't make it on air, that we got back to him in the newscast, and we explained why, but he came back in the weather center the next day. He was like, I would never have guessed. So, I just want to say thank you for that piece of information. I would never have guessed that was what was happening.
Thanks. I was wondering if, in dealing with the public, do you ever catch any flack? Maybe the forecast doesn't go as expected, and people say, "Chris, you ruined my weekend.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be a nice day."
So with social media, it happens even more because I put myself out there on social media, and if a forecast, and especially in our area where rain is precious, and if you forecast rain and everyone's expecting it and it goes around, right? I'll hear about that. We had above normal outlooks for rain, and then parts of our area got tremendous rain, and then San Antonio got like 2/10 of an inch through it all, and that was during Fiesta. And then, I was like, I almost did a post saying, "Look, folks, I'm giving it my best. It's around us, but I can't tell a storm what to do." So this past 2 weeks, I got a lot of credibility back, right? talking about complexes of storms and arrival. And so that's the way it works, because if you blow a rain forecast, it takes a whole lot of partly sunnies to make up for that, right? But you can make up for it quickly with another weather event. And people are like, you're back. You're my guy. You're back. And so I'm in good shape right now until the next forecast doesn't work out, right? So thunderstorms are really fickle. And uh, I hear a big thing about the San Antonio dome, the rain dome, but every market I've worked in, everyone has a dome. And it's because it's so psychological. It goes around me and it just leaves an impression on you. There is a little bit of science. There is on occasion where the Balcones escarpment, you could have storms coming down from the north, and we're like 5 to 10 degrees hotter in San Antonio and drier. And as they come down the escarpment, they just get zapped and dry out. And on radar, you can see it. It was coming. It was coming. So that's a case of science right there. But then there are other times too. They'll zigzag around. They'll go look for pockets of better instability here or over there, and so it's really challenging. In every severe weather season, I know we're going to have some low points in the forecast, and we're going to have a lot of high points. And so just nature of the beast. But I'm not hearing from the dome crowd as of last week. So the dome crowd has gotten pretty quiet, at least for now.
Can you tell us how the plasma streams from the coronal mass ejections are affecting the Earth's weather?
Well, so that's more, I would say that's more from the technological standpoint, and it's getting a little out of my arena of my comfort zone. But with those coronal mass ejections, that's more your satellite and disruptions, and that's more the impact versus actually altering weather or creating some kind of an issue with weather. So I've never adjusted a forecast based on a, G4 level or magnetic storm, but it's always the satellite disruptions. Expect some issues, your phone service, or whatever that yeah.
Chris, I found this so interesting. We wish we could stay all day.
Yeah, I know. I've totally blown past my time, and so because I was having a great time. Yeah, so I don't always get to talk to adults, and so I feel like I could take the leash off and just talk to y'all, and y'all not going to go talk to mom and dad and be traumatized, lightning and this. So I just go, and so but thank you all very much. I really enjoyed it. Yeah.
This is just a thank you.
Oh, thank you very much, and if possible, I'd love to get a group picture with you all, if we could do that, and then maybe I'll have you guys on the news. Yeah, as long as you've signed your waivers with mom and dad, so I can. But I always like to do pictures, whether it's school visits or whatever, but to give you all the shout out. And it's my way of saying thank you for having me out. And because you could ask anyone to come out here to talk to you. And so.
Yeah, come up the steps. Some of you, whoever feels like get down. Well, some can go up, some can stay down. But we really listen for hours.
Oh, yes. Well, actually, I was at the end.
Oh,
Yeah, I was done. Yeah.
It's very nice to see you in person.
My granddaughter's friend, St. Louis.
anybody that can do
Sent
stairs,
letters.
come on up here.
The house across the
You
street.
gather around and be
had-
so-
was a little down here.
Oh, yeah.
There's one that has surveys, no windows.
It happens all the time. We're like across the street, a tornado could wipe out a home and then you barely have a shingle that's off. That's how localized. Yeah. Unbelievable stuff you'll see. Sure.
All the short leaves need to be in you.
All right. I'll just slide right in. This is like a safe part of the group right
Okay, I want to do this.
Should be good.
All right. Look here.
Make sure I got what you want.
Put it on your Facebook post.
Oh, it's definitely going on Facebook.
Okay.
Good. Did you understand? Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Good.
Excellent picture. Excellent picture. Well, thank
Okay.
you all very much for having me out.
I know.
We get there. Shall I use this? Shall I use this to say the blessing?
Yeah, no, I was.
To say the blessing? Do you want me to use this? Okay.
Could I have all your attention? Lynn's going to give us a blessing for our meal before we go.
Then we can eat when we get there. Heavenly Father, thank you for this time together. Thank you for marvelous world that you have created, so beyond our understanding and so amazing. Thank you for those that understand it better and can share. Thank you for your love and your kindness. Thank you for the food, the hands that prepared it. Help us to truly be your disciples and share your love. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And this meeting is adjourned. Thank you. That was wonderful.
Much, yeah, that makes my day.
And we're all just a little bit starstruck.